What's up, fam?
What's up, fam?
Hey, just keeping it real with Charles and
Melendia.
yes, sir. Guess what time we're coming up on this month?
I know.
What?
Y'all want to know? It is June 24th, something like that, the end of this month.
No, actually June 24th, not something like that. No, it's actually June 24th.
We have been together
for 47 years, coming June 24th.
Yes.
And guess what?
Guess what?
Next month, July 21st, we would be married 40 years.
Woo!
No, we don't look like it, but it's the truth.
We got it. We're getting through it.
It's
Thank
the
the
truth.
Lord. Yes, yes, yes. So we're here to share with you all our journey, our pathway to 40.
Yep.
Somebody say, how did y'all get there?
How?
How could you ever have gotten there in this day and time?
Well, I can tell you, it's by the grace of God.
By the grace of God.
and it was a journey.
Yes.
And guess what?
It's still a journey.
Still a
journey. Still a journey. Yeah. So what we want to share a little bit today is about our journey and our path.
Yeah, and in hopes that we can help someone, whether you're newly married, making that 1 year, if you're less, or if you're a year, going to the 5-year mark, or even with that, going from 5 to 10, and just getting to those next, we're going to say, milestones.
Milestones.
Yes.
Exactly. So we went from before the vow, when forever found us.
Forever found us.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. All right.
So this is one of our many series that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
And we want to share with you all. So what we want to do is get you involved, like, share, contact your friends, those newly married, engaged, and let's talk about this.
And even season, right? Because I think we can share something. Even there may be something that resonates even with seasoned married people,
right,
as well. Yeah.
So in order to do that, we have to start, as they say, start back at one.
At the beginning.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah. So what was our beginning? We'll say this much. How and when did we meet? Okay. That's our beginning. So we look back, we said June 24th, 1978.
78. Did you say 78?
I definitely said 78.
That sounds like somebody being dated.
Well,
so that means he had to been like 10.
I don't know about 10, but
that's saying we don't look like what we've been through. Thank God for that. But yes, June 24th, 1978.
Which was a Friday night. So where did we meet?
Tell me.
We met in my hometown of Rock Hill, South Carolina, in the park, in Sunset Park, local park, Freedom Park. And that was Friday night, as I mentioned. We had dances. We used to do Tuesday night, Friday nights. Went to that dance. Even had my sister to do my S-curl that night.
Woo!
And showed up. Was in a conversation. Cousin of mine. We were looking at the female dancers. And I spotted someone that I didn't know. And I'm like, whoa, look at how she's moving. And I was saying, she is not from the Rock. And cousin and I had a bet. We were talking, he thought she was. So I said, I got to meet her. And when I saw her go to a high school friend of mine and a group of them, I said, okay, I know he's going to introduce me. So I walk over. What's up? What's up, my man? Okay, high school friend. What's up, boss? I say, who's that young lady? Wait, do you remember the song? The song you were dancing to at the time was what?
You can ring my bell.
You can ring my bell. Mm-hmm.
Ring my bell.
Okay. And after that song, you went over and you went back. They had the last call, the last dance of the night. This is it. Get on the dance floor, last song. And it was Michael Jackson, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. And when you went back out there, I went over to your cousin and I say, hey, who's the lady? He say, oh, it's my cousin from Baltimore. I said, oh, well, you got to introduce me. Okay. I waited.
That was the beginning of our journey.
And he introduced us, and we had conversation. And we walked a little bit, like after the dance, and just to get acquainted. And I didn't get your number. You know, I mean, no cell phones on this time. I didn't even get your number. And I just figured, okay, that's it. Never meet you again. Adios. And so the next day, your cousin came by, my parents, our store, family store that we ran, and they had your phone number and said, hey, my cousin wants you to give her a call. And I said, wow, really? Come on, man. And I said, okay. And we talked a couple of times. We talked.
We did.
And we went from there.
We did.
And go ahead.
We've been kind of kicking it ever since.
We were riding. Of course, you being from Baltimore, it was an 8-hour drive. It would have been.
So.
Long distance.
No, you're asking. Somebody can say, oh, you're from Baltimore. What in the world is she doing in the Rock?
Oh, yeah. That'd be a good question.
So let me just say, we had, family had a reunion every year where my grandparents lived. And that's how I got to the Rock. The year of 1978, we were here for a family reunion.
Yep.
So family went to a park, and that's where I met him.
Right. Okay, and you came down at least once a year?
Once a year.
Okay, we started writing letters. We were it's a long-distance relationship, and that, when we got acquainted that way, and we went on you remember our first date? We didn't, the first time we met, we did not, because you left. We didn't get to see each other, so you left. And the next time you came back, we went on our first date. We went to a movie.
Yes.
And definitely went to a movie.
So we do remember that.
Sure.
So 1978 is a long time. But what I do want to say, somebody was like, gosh, wow, 1978, that's like 47 years ago. Why were you all continuing to be connected to each other and still?
I'm sorry, but I don't like how low that mic is. I want it to be up to 6. Go ahead.
So someone can say, why were you all still connected to each other? And I think it was just the point of something new. Something new, someone new, someone different.
Yeah, right.
So
you met a country boy.
I did.
And I met a city girl.
But he didn't sound like he was from the country, because we always had this stigma about people in the South, even though, Maryland is kind of considered that too. But as back then, we would say, what do I call it? I'm trying to think now, because it was the Southern man went down the, what did I call it?
Well, I mean, I won't help you. If you don't expect me to help you.
South Kakalaki?
Yeah, that's what you did. Yeah, you wouldn't
something
expect me to help you kind of clown the South.
No, it wasn't clown. It was just maybe the ignorance.
Yeah, you say, South Kakalaki.
So, but I would always say he did not sound like or talk like he was from the South, right? So, as you were explaining, we wrote back and forth for several years.
Yeah, from 78 to
82.
82 is when we decided that, okay, it might be something to this. Let's talk about looking at a more serious relationship. So, and we talked about you. Well, I moved to North Carolina, and at the time we talked about you going to school either in South Carolina or closer to the area. And you ended up where?
I ended up at HBCU in Winston-Salem. And I moved to North Carolina at that time in 1982.
82. Well, you moved, yeah, definitely in 82. So we ended up with her here in 82.
And we ended up moving together.
We did move in together. That was something I said I would never do. I said I would never shack. I would never do this.
Anyway.
But there we were. Okay, so we did.
Well,
okay,
yeah.
And that went on. So, and we became engaged
the next year.
The following year. So,
and that's where we talked about our dreams,
right,
and our goals, our financial status of where we would desire to be, children, and just having the aspirations of what we were looking for in the unity of marriage.
Sure, right, definitely. And, with that too, the engagement period, we talked about a lot of that. And we discussed 2 children, maybe 3. They would be 2 years apart. That's what we talked about. We talked about, as far as, definitely getting us our own home. We talked about possibly a business, because you were doing some things then. And what else we talked about? Finances, kind of keep finances, or hoping, to do some things, financially with the business or investments. Talked about. And we had aspirations.
We did.
Okay.
We did. And so when we finally decided to set a date, we got married.
Well, we said we finally decided to set a date.
We set a date.
Okay, we got married. When did we get married?
We got married July 21st.
July 21st, 1985. And I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
That was a day.
It was a day. It was a great day. Now, besides all that,
beautiful day.
It was a beautiful day. It was a great day.
Hot day.
But for those that are tapping in on this podcast, that was back there, attended the wedding, I need you to put in some comments. How long did the wedding last?
There's a controversy. Some say a few hours. I guess some talk like a few days when they go home. But we get reddit about this thing often.
It was long.
And some of the people say, boy, that's the longest wedding I ever been to. It was because I know you and I, we both had sort of fasted that day, and we were a little bit weak. And I know. Oh wait, you didn't eat, right? You didn't eat, right? So that was a fast. You didn't. Okay, so anyway, we had eaten. We got there, and
it was long.
And it was long, and I, I appreciate the late minister John Miller. Who married us, and the thing is just like at one point when I saw her flinch like she's about to pass out, I looked at him and said, like she's about to go. He said, well, the man spoke. He said, yeah, because I felt I came for a wife, and I do want to get one. Please.
The reason why I say I was about to pass out is because we did say that we got married in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And it was probably 95 degrees.
It was 90-something degrees, I believe, yeah. And it was outside too. Yeah, it was outside. Definitely outside.
So
lots of family.
Just envision that. So without saying anything, you can picture that in your mind. 95 degrees, South Carolina, and outside. And I have all of this wedding stuff on. Boy, yeah. So, but gratefully, we got through that. We got through that.
And I wrote you a song too.
Yeah, he wrote me a
song. Song.
Yeah. So, moving past that, we had anticipated a honeymoon and
Mm-hmm.
you know, all of those niceties that you envision when you are getting ready to get married, or
Mm-hmm.
didn't happen. But
Yeah, we were going Bahamas, a Bahamas cruise. We did. Well, it
yeah,
would have been a new thing for us, but then we ended up. It didn't happen because we got ripped off.
yeah,
Basically.
yeah, we
Yeah.
did. So,
So, what
you
was our
know,
honeymoon?
what?
Well,
Sleeping.
yeah,
I
we,
don't know.
we we took the day off and just spent time
Yeah,
together. Right.
sleeping. So,
Mm-hmm.
and what we want to kind of dive into a little bit is learning to love through the growing pains of the reality
Mm-hmm. Okay.
of
Well,
those first 5 years.
well, and our reality set in because, like I say, we didn't get to do our honeymoon, and we took off a day, and we were into the rotation and the movement.
No
The next
routine.
day, kind of going at it, and go ahead, go ahead.
Going at it.
I mean, what I mean, like going, at marriage, yeah, going
Yeah.
at it. You know how newlywed
Yeah. So
couples do.
we learned how immediately we learned how we had taken some of our bad habits into
Yeah,
our marriage.
yeah,
Hmm.
hmm right. What bad habits you want to share?
We had something like these non-loving love taps. You know, he hit me, I hit him because we were frustrated with each other, and that's how bad our communication was.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It was it
it
was ugly. I
yeah, it was
said that,
ugly
and it could have
because
been worse. Yeah, it could
it
have
could have
been.
been worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, we did. It wasn't good. Wasn't good communication skills at all.
Mm-mm.
Um, and it got pretty ugly a couple of times.
Yeah,
And I'll say, go ahead.
but as I can say for myself, not having a let's just say anything to reference
Hmm.
of a marriage and what a wife should be like or how a marriage should be like. You know,
Hmm.
I was raised by a single parent, and my father was not in my life. So I took some of those angers and frustrations into the marriage. And without knowing or having the understanding of the importance of communication and what successful marriage should look like. So that was one of the bad habits that we took into the marriage
Sure.
that I don't even think we identified them like we should have.
Right. No, we didn't even know to identify anything. We talk
Hmm.
about this question to ask before you say I do. We talk
Hmm.
about those things now. And
Hmm.
that's looking in retrospect. We didn't have the knowledge of some of that,
Hmm.
really to go in depth with then. Because
Hmm.
and if you remember, that went on for a little bit before we married. We did it in our marriage.
Hmm.
And then until the last time that happened, we were actually on our way to church,
Hmm.
right?
You know, the
And running late.
nonverbal,
Yeah.
unlovable love taps.
Running late, and I'm
Hmm.
getting on you. We got to go running late, and we went through all of that. And I can recall us at a green light. The light was green, and we were going on, tapping each other, bap, 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 and I tell you, crazy.
Yeah.
So, and that was the last time. And the thing about it, we were on our way to church, trying to get, we were already late, and we get there, and we found out
Church was
there
canceled
was
because of
no church.
weather or something. I don't know.
Cancellation. Don't know, but
So,
it canceled. But from there, ask the Lord to help in that area because we know that that was a losing way, a losing approach, to marriage.
mhm.
And we had to pray, Lord, take this out of us, take this away, take us away. This is just one of those things we don't need. And I want to stop and even say that if someone out there is dealing with whether physical or any type of abuse or being um, taken for granted to that degree and to where it even um, jeopardizes your health or even life, then we want to say, hey, sometimes if you have to get away from that, you need to get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to say to the ones that are inflicting that you need to check yourself and you need to call on the Lord because God can deliver from that. And you've got to be willing to be humble enough that He can deliver. Okay?
Yeah. So we no way advise anyone to stay together in any kind of abusive relationship.
Right.
So understanding that for us, we learned that we should have dealt with those things, something like that, before we got married, and identified that, and got that taken care of by asking the Lord to help us truly and stop it. So going into a marriage with habits that you had before you got married, you need to identify that.
Sure.
And address it and work it out and see whether or not if that is a deal breaker.
And if it requires counseling, we suggest you look into getting the counseling that you need. And with that, we suggest that you get someone that has a spiritual, biblical based, counseling program.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So realizing though that some things don't come up until after you get married.
Sure, right.
But some things are noticeable. You can identify. You know that if you were doing this tip tapping before you got married, that hadn't been addressed. That's obvious. But then there could be other things, because another thing for us, we were very spirit filled into a church that we felt as our family, and what we should have identified and realized that you cannot allow other people to make decisions about what goes on in your house.
And that's the thing. I know one formula doesn't work for everybody. And sometimes we do things that may not even be working for us, but yet we impose on other couples and other people. And that's the thing. So we learn, I guess through that, we learn dependency and independency.
Right.
And what I'm saying, depend on God and be independent from people's thoughts and ideas for your marriage. Sometimes when the doors close, those people not there, bishop, brother, deacon, they're not in your household, per se. When you close those doors, it's you and your spouse, and that's how you should decide what works for you.
Yes, and we learned that pretty quickly because it caused us to have friction amongst each other. Now here we are, supposed to be a spiritual couple, but we have friction because of the spiritual environment that we were in or what we were allowing. So we both knew going into the marriage what we had as aspirations of being together with God, having God to lead our relationship. But when it came to the influence of how it appeared in other relationships in the church, there was things that tried to mimic that. And that wasn't for our marriage, to mimic somebody else's marriage like that.
Right. And because I think too, we lost a few things. We lost actually the romance in our relationship because it became more, I guess you can say, duty-fied, kind of thing. And, I'm the man, I'm the head, and you submit to me. And, and that kind of thing, which led to guilt, romance or guilt, pleasures to that degree. So with that, I think we were more romantic before we were married and doing wrong, more or less. Let's just say it like it is. And so, yeah. And so we had to learn through that and learn through these things to actually cherish each other, more in the relationship, that the relationship should be more give and take. And I guess with that, we listen to each other. I mean, I'm still working on that too,
So, that was our, I would say, hard part of what we would like to, assist would strategize certain things like this for couples that may be in that situation right now, going into your 5 years.
Yes.
And that's be aware of these light bulbs, be aware of some of these things that may be in the back of your mind or you should have addressed. And even if you're going through it right now, address it, and identify it so y'all can talk and work through it.
Sure.
Because what we also had to learn is that we had to identify and shift from I to we. So, because I don't mind being submissive to my man, but when it became more of a dictatorship, that's when I got my guards up, and it felt invasive and territorial. So when we don't learn to identify and say that this is how we're going to work our marriage, not mimicking how somebody else is preaching and teaching how they are going to do their marriage. That is what hurt our marriage and hurt the romance and the things that we had so deeply and passionately before we got married. But don't worry, because we got back on track. But just identifying that now,
right.
Looking back on the younger self, we see and want to share to help prevent any type of issues like that with someone like yourself that's out here maybe dealing with it. So we dealt with the lack of trust, and then we kind of got messed up on our visions.
Okay,
right?
we're going a few places. You say, okay, you mentioned the lack of trust. Okay, let's expound on the lack of trust. So I guess with that, when you say we experienced that, that we went through a period in our marriage where there wasn't trust issues.
Right, there was trust issues.
Okay.
And a lot had to do with the way I was raised.
And really,
as a single,
the past, we say, past things that we, right. So, and that's the thing. So with that, we learn how to navigate better, in our marriage. And then we went on from, I know you mentioned from I to we, just like when we first got married, you were working before we got married. And basically, most of the women in the church that we were in, none were working. And that's one thing. So I was doing what the brothers did, and like, hey, you're going to be home, housewife. And that went on for a few weeks. Did you cry? I think you were crying. I want to work. You didn't cry? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. But anyway, you wanted to work. You say, hey, I want to work. I've always worked. That's what I want to do. I want to work. And then you say, I want my own money. And that was the thing there. Because I want to be asking you, I want to get my own money. When I want to do something, I want to be able to do it. And there, that was the part which we show that we needed to understand that it's no longer like I want to do it. It's a we thing. So we got there, and I just say, hey, I don't want you to go to work on the I thing. If you do, I want it to be a we. And then and we had that conversation later. And I say, okay, that's fine, even though none of the other women were working. I say, okay, that's fine. Let's do it.
So identifying the separateness from what somebody else does to what is handled and done in your household, check that. Make sure that you're doing this so you all can have a shared vision, because it starts becoming divided. And then you have regrets and you get upset unnecessarily because you haven't talked about it and agreed on, maybe we did it before we got married, but then things start changing after we got married.
Sure, right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and you talk about shared vision. I remember way before we got married, probably 82 time frame. I know we went into a neighborhood. It was somewhat of an expensive, nice neighborhood, and we were driving through, looking at homes, and we said, "Hey, one day we will own a home like this." And we ended up, though, like years later, I guess probably maybe 10 years later or so, maybe less. And we actually lived in that same neighborhood that we had dreamed about or talked about. And that was ironic, that we did. No, we put it out there. We put that energy out. It wasn't ironic. It fell in place the things that we spoke. But early on in marriage, we were looking at a house. We were going to buy a house. We were looking at it. We had our plans. We talked about this house, and I did a shift. I know one of the brothers there. We were very close, and we ended up buying land, and we did a double wide mobile home. And that wasn't your favorite thing.
No, that's one of my least favorite.
and we, I know you really didn't like that shift. You wanted the house that we did. And I was just saying, hey man, we can do this for less money. We can have a place, have things set up. And I was thinking economic now. But now, in retrospect, or looking back, I mean, I know we lived there a while. Wasn't the best, and I guess you figured because we were not in sync, we had trouble. We had a lot of trouble in that. Do you feel like that?
Well, of course, we had some trouble when we first moved in there.
Yes.
Excuse me. We had some trouble when we moved in there, as far as getting set up and getting things taken care of, and it did cause some resentment.
Sure.
And I felt that I just settled. So, but glory be to God.
Don't you even try.
It wasn't what I desired,
Yeah,
and
it wasn't.
I went through a lot of emotional trauma. I think about that, because I didn't think that, as some of us women may share, that I was being heard.
Right.
So thank God for revelation, though.
And one thing I want to say, one of the trials, I'm only saying this because I feel that it was very trying after being in there. We moved in, brand new home, had set up, and then our second night, as you were washing clothes, everything stopped with the water, and we suffered with that for a while. Went through a lot of frustrations. I know calling people out to try to drill, and they would hit rock. It didn't happen. It went for months.
Did he say
6 months? And they were just buying pumps and they not working. It was just so much. It was a lot. And eventually, I'm going to say the victory in that. The success story is this, that we were so disappointed with people not being successful in getting water, until one day we didn't even know that the company was coming out. They did it, hit the drilling, and they hit water. And the guy talked about an artesian well, the way the water just gushed up, and he said it was 500 gallons a minute. He said, I've never seen that. And I just want to say, through the suffering, God showed himself mighty.
Yes.
And even in that little town that they had their own little newspaper, they wrote about that well. And someone told me, wait a minute, that's you? I saw the article. I didn't know they had written an article, but I give God the glory, even after the suffering, or through the suffering. That's the thing.
So the lesson in that for me was, I could see it on face value that I didn't like this. I didn't like where we were, and this was happening and that was happening. But through it all, we gained strength through the struggle. And we could have been, and probably was, probably, I would say, a strength for someone else. So it may not, that may not have been necessarily for us.
And one thing I want to say, do I have any regrets, anything there? One thing in looking back, as far as value, I'm going to say this, as far as the value of our property and everything, I would say the better choice would have been that house, to be honest, because I think it would have retained more value than what we dealt with. But glory be to God, we learned.
So no, in your first 5 years, believe me, it's a learning process. You're learning each other. You're learning the ways of navigating through differences, you're learning. And you have to identify that and acknowledge that and address it. So, yes, we gain strength through the struggle. And I can say, in that home that wasn't so pleasing to us, we had two beautiful children.
Yes.
And our second child was the final test in that home, I believe, that was one of the most major struggles for us. We had a son that was born with congenital problems, things that I'd never heard of, we had never heard of, never dealt with. And if I seem a little emotional about it, because it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. And besides the fact of going through that, we had our loving family that we weren't in close proximity with them. My mom was in Maryland. His parents were in South Carolina, and we were in North Carolina.
Sure.
But we thought we had the church family, where you thought that you had that solace, someone that you can hopefully go to. But we didn't. We didn't. All we had was each other and God.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was one of the painful realizations of understanding you cannot depend on people. I don't care where they come from, church, school, work, whatever. You have to depend on God. But through it all now, don't misunderstand me. It would have been very supportive and comforting to have friends, family, church. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, where me and my husband was on a balcony trying to make decisions, life and death decisions of our son, mind you, I just had him, 2 weeks prior.
Yeah.
And now we're in the hospital.
No, I say a week. Really? It's like a week.
Okay. So, I was all discombobulated. I mean, I hadn't even kind of got my body and my mind oriented. And then here I have a son that's not breathing properly. We have a son that's not breathing properly. And he had a disorder that no one ever seemed to know anything about.
So, very rare condition. Yeah. The thing, too, in all of that is that we went through a lot of emotional, I guess, turmoil. And so, again, if you, I'll say this much for leaders and people that are claiming to be in the Lord, I will say this, that it's so important to be a voice, to be a comfort to other people, that are going through, and at least to be considerate there. We and during the times, what was disappointing is to hear, people say that we're not praying, or I'm not praying with you, or they are praying for you, or to hear things like they're probably going through because of sin, that kind of thing, disobedience, same thing. It's very disappointing when you hear those kind of things, when people make judgments, and it hurts, to be honest with you. It definitely hurts, and it really, it's like, wow. And you, in your heart, you're saying, Lord, I want to do your will. That's what you're saying, and yet people can so quickly judge what you're going through. But then when it turns around, or they're going through something, they're thinking, oh, this is because I'm obedient, I'm serving the Lord. Well, how can you be so judgmental about somebody else? So my thing is, take a pause on that and don't be so quick to judge. Just like Job and his companions, they were there, tell him, hey, you must have did something wrong. And so he said, miserable companions, are you all, So, but the thing about it, we were on that terrace, and we were embracing each other while our son was in emergency surgery. And we didn't know whether he was going to live or die. And I was praying. I said, Lord, if you're going to take him, I wish you had done it during birth. Because his birth was, oh, my Lord, it was something. It was, oh man, it was something. And I thought, I know our son came quickly when coming, and they say he's going to be 7 to 10 pounds. Our daughter was 5'9.5", 5 pounds 9.5, 9.5 pounds, 5 pounds 9.5 ounces. Sorry. And then our son, they were telling her between 7 and 10 pounds that he would be, and he, when he was coming fast, and it just oh man, it was such where you didn't get anything for pain. I think and then it happened so fast. You asked for something, they said no, it's too late. We've gone too far. We can't give you anything. And they asked me, you need to run and get dressed. And I ran, got the little scrubs on, and it was just you and the nurse. I think they were looking for your doctor. When I got back in after changing that quick, there was a room full of doctors and nurses. They were giving her oxygen. And I'm looking at what in the world happened just in that quick a time. And I'm sitting here, and it was like, hey, where's the doctor? Where's the doctor? And they couldn't give you the episiotomy, couldn't give you nothing. And you sit there, and he was coming. They tried to get you to the delivery room. And then all of a sudden, they got there, and they said, nope, it's too late. They have to roll you back in. And I'm sitting here, and when our son came up, he was lifeless. And I sit here, I thought he was gone. And they had him, and they suctioned his nose out. He didn't cry, didn't do anything, no response. And that's when I started looking at her saying, Lord, please spare my wife, because I thought our son was gone. And at that point, when they got him out in the hallway, he cried. And I said, thank you, Lord. Watch over my wife. And I'm telling you, I gotta say, y'all, he was in the hospital for 5 weeks. The only time I cried was when you and I held each other on that terrace. I wanted to be strong for my family, because I grew up, they called me crybaby when I grew up, I'll tell you that. But one thing, my family was not gonna see me cry. And that was a time that I did, and you and I were on that balcony of the terrace. We sat there and we held each other and we cried and prayed. We said, Lord, right now we're scared. I'm telling you, right now, because we don't know where you're taking us. But one thing we will do is that we will trust you. And that's what we said. And we made a promise to each other. If you remember, we said, what we're feeling right now, if we know of any people, we don't have to know them, that's going through, especially dealing with a child with a birth condition, or we'll be there if we can, because we don't want anybody to feel what we were feeling. And we made that promise, and I believe we kept that promise.
To this day.
Yes. And even some of the same people that we did not feel showed up for us, we showed up for them. And I'm not saying anything to be braggadocious, but I'm saying it for a truth. And I think through all of that, when you do that, that will overcome any lack of love, any lack of sincerity, empathy. And that's one thing God showed us. We got to overcome that. These people were more spiritual, had been more in this thing about Bible than we were. But the Lord said, just do this. Forget all of that. You just show it. And that's one thing we did. And I'll say, God came through for us. Our son's 5 weeks in the hospital. And you not really having a chance to process, recover, hormones everywhere. And Oh man, you on the edge, girl. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And you're rightly so. Rightly so. And my thing, I talked to you, and I said, listen, we're not going there. We're gonna be here for our son. We're gonna be here. And I said, no, can't lose you. You can't lose you. Devil wants you to lose your mind over this. No, we got to be strong for him. And I tell you, and we met a nurse. May she rest in peace.
Cornelia Fox.
Cornelia Fox. May she rest in peace. That woman, you want me to stop?
No.
Okay. We went through something, and the nurses were looking at you, the doctors were looking at you, and you were falling apart. And I know for myself, trying to hold it together. And then Cornelia came to us, and she said, listen, these people watching you, they're taking notes, they're observing, looking at your mental state, how things are going. She said, listen, you want to get your baby out of PICU. And she said, you got to learn how to do it. He got a trachea out of me. Oh, my Lord. After a few weeks, and we saw that and see this thing, and he was the youngest patient at that hospital, North Carolina Baptist Hospital, the youngest patient at the time that they had ever given a trach to, this doctor. And boy, I'm trying to tell you. And he says it's going to be several years old before you can hear him cry. Oh, man. Lord. So we had our struggle. And I tell you.
Yes, we did.
Oh, boy.
And we're just talking about the first 5.
Yeah.
We're just talking about the first 5.
Okay.
And we are emotional about this particular topic.
Yeah.
Especially because, now mind you, I still had a 4-year-old at home. We still had a 4-year-old that we had to help her understand mommy and daddy was staying in the hospital, but when mom left, she had a big belly and she was coming home to share the baby with the family. That wasn't going to happen the way we anticipated.
Well, it actually did happen. You know, the first time he came home, he was home for a week, and then we noticed some changes with his breathing. Strider, he would stop breathing, his lip would turn blue, get blue in the forehead. And then as we took him to the doctor, that's when she said, you all need to rush him. Something is obstructing his airway.
So correction, that we will bring her brother back home. And he was going to be different than when she saw him months ago. So months before. So you don't get a book. You don't get instructions on how to navigate through situations like that. And when I say that I love you through it all, I love you through it all.
Oh man, really? Yeah.
Granted, I don't remember, the birthing part because that's when my life was on the table, right? I do know when it was time for us to make decisions, how difficult it was when we didn't have those that we thought were in faith with us.
Right.
So when we share this with you, we want to be able to be as transparent and as real to you about our journey, our pathway. These are the steps to our pathway to 40. And if it wasn't for God, I'm telling you folks, if it was not, my mental state would not have been, it wouldn't have been under control. And I don't even know if our marriage could have, because a lot of marriages don't survive. This is one of the things that marriages don't survive.
But let me remind you of something too. This was in 1990 when he was born. But early in the year, when my job had closed and I transferred, in that transfer I was making less money. The money they cut me was $945. you know, and so I was losing that, you know, on a monthly basis. And they said, we're going to do you a favor. We're going to do it in 3 parts, $315.
$945 per month. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
$315 a month. The first month, $315, and there I'm making the less salary.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, later in the same year, this is our 5th year.
Right.
Later in the same year is when our son is born.
Right.
And then we were already, we were good because you were working. So that made up what the deficit there. She was already working. So it was, we're still good. And then now, child born with congenital birth condition. And now we have, and then that took you out of work.
Mm-hmm.
And then guess what? Now, and then 2, out of the hospital, it was a lot. 5 weeks, you went every day, about twice a day. I missed 1 day out of 5 weeks. Was working, going to school, and I'm telling you, I tried to balance and not let people know what was going on. I carried that, trying to be strong, and I had to do a public report where I told what we were dealing with. And the people in that room in my class were astounded by the things that I said, because they said, there's no way you're going through everything you said you're going through right now. Charles, we never would have told that. But it showed up later. It showed up years
by
later.
the grace of God.
Yes, God kept us.
He kept us.
Yes, yes.
So we're saying we go through the minute stuff in the early part of the years, you know, the little tic-tac things that we, you know, we could work through, the not being on shared vision about the house and things like that. Yeah. But now we get hit with some major
real stuff,
travesties that we have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the love of our family and our son, the life of our son, and how we're going to be able to navigate through something we've never experienced. So when we say the first 5 years, we're talking about going through and having the strength through the struggles.
Sure.
And that strength only came from God. And I'm here to say, you know, many, many years later, he's almost 35 now. And what?
Okay, you can go ahead. Yeah, just so you don't like worry about us. And,
so that's why I wanted to.
I'm glad you.
So
definitely.
You know,
because you're probably. What happened?
He struggled for years.
That's coming. But now
he
go ahead.
For years. Yeah, he struggled with confidence. He struggled. We struggled. It was different because he did look different.
Yes.
Than what other people would envision their children to look like.
Sure.
But it was the sole purpose we did not understand yet. Okay.
And we're going to talk about that as
we're going to talk about that
more
later.
about.
But just
even
letting
the challenges
you know,
there. Yes.
He's 35 now, and he's amazing.
Works in the financial institution.
And believe me, not just him, that older sister, motherly sister that he has was his forefront of supporter. So, you know, through it all, as we get to the journey to 40, we will share more of those victories.
Yes.
But our purpose is basically kind of getting you to understand that in the first 5 years, it is going to be, it can be pretty tumultuous.
Tumultuous.
Use
a different word. You make it be bad. Okay.
It can be bad.
Okay.
It can be bad.
All right.
But know through all who your help comes from.
Yes.
And that your partner, your husband, your wife, the one that you really dreamed of and desired. And at the time, maybe you all had that nice, beautiful, extravagant wedding. But it's not about those things.
Right.
It's after all of that is done and the real life hits in those first 5 years. So what we want to talk a little bit is just really
have a few questions, right?
Quickly talk about some thought-provoking questions.
Okay, right.
We'll
go ahead.
And just a couple that, you know.
And you can ask yourself these questions or answer them yourself. So I'm going to go ahead. First question is, what first drew you to each other? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And has that reason changed?
Mm-hmm.
For myself, what drew me to her, as you hear, that, at the park, she got my attention with dancing. But as we started talking, engaging, that went on for a few years. And I said, you know what? My man could, at some point, get into a relationship with her. I didn't care about a relationship, like a serious relationship in the beginning. You didn't either. And we were young. And so later I said, you know what? I think I would consider marrying this woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. So has that reason changed? I mean, as far as dancing, uh, she dances. She dances okay. Sometimes she teased me with the dancing, but we good. We good. But still, with that, I do appreciate you, and my reason, and nothing's changed.
And if I was to answer that, of course, the exterior part, I loved how he had that Michael Jackson look, with the fro and he sang. And it was so funny because when we went out and I saw him on stage singing, I hear all the girls screaming. I love that. I thought it was something, he's coming home with me. So, that drew me to him. The external, the not as important part, the superficial, But then when I look into the actual meat of what drew me to him was his integrity. And he still has that to today. The transparency, the integrity, the honesty. You don't find them kind of men like that in these days. And sometimes it's like, okay.
I'm a cash app you later. I will cash app you later, my girl. Go ahead, keep talking.
To the point, has that changed? It's only gotten better.
Well, thank the Lord.
It's only gotten better.
I appreciate it.
So the next one I would ask, was there a moment you truly knew that I was the one?
After, I would say, around 1983, I think it was. Yeah, because one thing, and I'll say this much. I'm going to say that sometimes we get misled from whether it's older men, like for young men, we get misled when we're told, boom, do all you can, all this stuff like that, do all you see. I got misled and I started running that craziness in my life. And it got to a point where it was like, what are you trying to prove? And once I saw that, Charles, you only being foolish, I say, let me go ahead and shut this down and let me consider making you my fiance. And I even told someone that that cussed me out. What I say, no, I'm not messing with you no more. I say, I'm gonna work on my relationship with my fiance.
When you told another female about right? Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So okay. So let me ask this. So what advice did other people give you? Concerning marriage and all.
Well.
And was it helpful?
Some of it was not. I would say before, some of it was not. You listen to advice that was not suited for your relationship. So let's just say it was silly advice. It was more, um, you know, don't have kids in the first 5 years. That's for them. That was for them.
Right.
Or
that couldn't have been from the people we were in church with. Because they were having kids, boy, I tell you that.
So, yeah. But one prominent advice I remember that I think that was more helpful to any, and I say that even to today to those that are getting ready to get married, and that is don't let people dictate how you and your companion run your marriage. Keep people, family, church people, friends, keep them out your business. Keep them out your business.
Okay. So, all right.
But I think if we could follow up and say our last thing, and if you could talk to our younger self,
Mm-hmm.
we talk to our younger selves. Uh, what would we say?
Well, I guess it's just the advice of you all, more or less, when you plan together of how you want your marriage to look. And again, realize that everything that people give you may not be best for you. And that's the thing there too.
Yeah.
And though we were not close to family a lot, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But even with other people, whether it's bishop somebody or minister somebody, times you can listen, you can analyze, but you gotta hear you in the process. And that's you asking God what's his direction for your marriage relationship.
I did all that. I would say the same thing, and I would give that to all of you all. Just know where your strength comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much, I understand, your tribe and having your buddies and your girls and stuff like that, and your guys maybe having your buddies, but the strength in the marriage, in a successful marriage, is between the two of you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Everybody else is just noise.
Mm-hmm. And that's why, one thing is good to say that for this reason shall a man, leave his father and his mother and cleave into his wife. So there's a cleaving process that happens.
Yes.
And, mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode and this first series that we wanted to share. You all walking with the path of us to our road to 40.
Mm-hmm.
And with that said, we're going to have a couple more series that we want to talk about and get you connected into what we're talking about as well. But our final thing is for you to connect with us by emailing us. I would love to know what was some of your thought-provoking questions that you think that
Sure.
you could
Right.
have
Mm-hmm.
shared with each other. I'd love to hear yours.
Even your stories,
Just
some of the things that how things happen for you.
Yeah.
And then again, as we mentioned, one thing we want to do is to shout out. We want to start a series where we just shout out anniversaries. So please email us your anniversaries, your cousin them anniversaries, your parents, and we want to do that and shout them out during an episode.
Yeah.
Again, you see our email. We're going to have that so you can do that, and we want to hear from you. And we want you to like, subscribe, and share the podcast, and also do the alert bell for the algorithm.
Yeah.
All right.
So when you email us, then besides sending us some of your anniversary dates so we can shout them out, we want to rock with you guys too in your celebration. But in our special celebration, we would love to have you with us too.
Right.
So we are looking to do a
40th
celebration,
anniversary celebration right on next month.
Yes.
So
on Zoom.
Yeah, and if you were to again send us an email and just say, hey, you want to go to the date, you want the invitation, we will send that to you. And we just want a community of people celebrating our 40th.
We're going to have a DJ, we're having games, we're having trivia,
giveaway.
We're going to have a dance off, some prizes. We want you all to be there. So it's going to be on Zoom. Next week's episode is going to be another part of the series of our travel and road to 40.
Yep.
So I want you to stay tuned. Don't forget, as he said, what?
Well, it's like this. If if the engagement to 5 years is this emotional, I don't know. I'm like, well, hey,
the reality of marriage.
Yes. And it's been an emotional roller coaster, to be honest with you. But God has brought us through. Hey, look. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we pray your strength that you demonstrate the love of God in your marriage as we are setting out to do.
That's
that you
right.
pray with each other and for each other. Okay, until next time.
Until next time.
Just keeping it real with Charles and
Melendia.
Yep.
Bye.
Love you.